but I think if we're going to move into that direction to taking the mayor out of sitting as the chair of the council meetings, then I think we need to deal with all the other issues, that's all I'm saying.
So what other issues? I know we.
Well, I had suggested back in the day when Shane promised me, who then was the president of council, that, and you were sitting there, I think, Peggy, weren't you on council at the time when this came through?
For the five.
For this five, yeah, that they would go back and take a look at creating some divisions between what the mayor does and what council has oversight in, and that was never done. So I think that needs to be done. And it's not the person that's in the office, so understand
Right,
this.
it's whoever you're
This
right.
is who's ever operating our city.
All I'm asking is, and maybe you can't tell me right now, I understand it's over years.
There's many issues.
But
I
if you
mean,
wanna send me an email on it.
yeah, I mean, there's
Oh, well.
just, you know, I think when council sets a budget, for instance, you set a budget and you say to the mayor, you have to stay within this budget. You operate and administrate within this budget. You can't have these line item vetoes that you wanna say that, you know, you can't tie the mayor's hands.
So
Whoever that
you're
person
saying
is.
budget, you're wanting to go budget by department or rather than.
No,
line
I'm saying
item?
if you set the budget and say, okay, the budget for the city is
Right.
$20 million this year, and you've already created your line items for each of your departments,
Right.
then he should be able to spend within his range of what has in his departments.
Or you want a budget like the state's budget.
Yeah, I mean, the
We
governor
follow the
doesn't have,
State guidelines for budget, and we don't follow the state guidelines.
so the mayor doesn't have to come back each and every time and have an approval on everything that he does. You're not allowing him to administrate.
Well, only if he goes over the line item.
Oh, if he goes over the line item, then true.
But what about
No,
within
over the
that line
fund,
item,
over the fund.
a certain
Well,
level
yeah,
of
well, that's
spend?
not
I mean,
a line item.
Yeah,
Are
but
you
you're
saying
talking
if-
two different things.
No,
Alright.
so it's a separate issue there.
Yeah.
Listen, if you say you have a blanket budget of $25 million, okay, and I'm spending within my budget, then I should be able, as the administrator, to be able to spend within the budget.
So you're saying if I say the budget's 25 million, as long as you don't spend over 25 million, you can spend it any way you want?
Well, I'm not suggesting that there has to be reappropriation, obviously, for that, and that has occurred for hundreds of years. Where at the end of in sometime during the year, we come back and we reappropriate because we find that one department isn't using the money this way and we can use the money over here, so we reappropriate, we readjust all those numbers.
Well, we also have found historically that it gets abused.
It can get abused.
Because
Of
giving
course.
one person the authority to spend that entire 20 million with no oversight and allowed to do what he wants, he's gonna do what he wants. Which is all his buddies get to business and.
Okay, but what you can't have in a city, and I was a councilman, and I wouldn't wanna do this, you know, micromanage, and I think that, you know, that's what you will have happen in many communities. I think Hudson's a good example of why they go through so many city managers, because you have a council of members of council that are micromanaging the administrative operations of Hudson. That's why they keep going through all the city managers, they quit one after another.
Were you not using a more realistic example, forget the $25 million, because it's a big chunk of change, but a department that has a $100,000 budget, which is very small, but a line item for equipment may be $200, but you spend over $200, now you have to come back to council to get up. That I think is what you're meaning.
Exactly, I
As
mean,
long
if
as
you,
you don't go-
as long as you stay within your budget for that department, then you're okay.
$25 million is a lot.
I know, I threw the $25 million.
So that's what I was asking, you're
Yeah.
saying we should go back, we did it a couple of years ago and budget per department, not per line.
The state's budget, I mean, actually, not the state's budget, but the way we're following the budget is not the.
I don't know that you have line item budget.
We do.
We do now.
Okay, you do now,
We do.
but you see, that was something you obviously put in place later, right?
Well, the mayor's had line item veto for a long time.
Right.
in the
But
city.
that's stuff you're
We're not discussing, you're not discussing doing away with line item veto, are you?
Now, I'm not suggesting doing away with line item veto, I'm suggesting though that whoever is sitting in that position should have some ability to work within their overall budget to be able to operate. You can't stymie the city and say, well, you gotta come back to council if you gotta make that expenditure, it's an emergency, you gotta get it done. You can kinda hold up everything. And that's what I see on the outside looking in right now, that's what's occurring.
So I guess the question is, what changes do you think we need to consider for the charter to correct what you perceive as a problem?
Perhaps maybe it is that we put in there something to the effect that the mayor has within the budget, if his budget is set by appropriation, that he can spend within his appropriated dollars that has been given him. If he can't go over those appropriated dollars.
That's already here.
I understand that, but with the line item right now, let's assume that the mayor has, in the police, I guess, or let's talk about the police department has, I'm just gonna think this out a little bit, but let's assume that he has $20,000 to spend on capital improvement for his department there. Just trying to put the reason to this, but he's got $20,000 to spend, and he has a total of $100,000 in that department, and he needs to take some from out of that capital. He can take it out of operating cost or supply cost, and he can move it over.
I don't understand what you're
Well,
saying.
he may have a budget of operating costs that are beyond the $20,000. Maybe he has another $5,000 someplace that he can pull from. But it's all well within the appropriated amount. He should be able to do that, don't you agree?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well,
I'm not getting it.
okay. You got $20,000 in capital improvement dollars, and you got another $5,000 sitting in an operating cost that you have. Maybe it's designated as not operating costs. And he's not using the operating costs.
Uh-huh.
So you can take the $5,000, it's well within the budget, you can apply it to his capital improvement.
He can do that right now.
That's
Not with capital,
Well, I
but
don't
he can't
think
do
you
that
can.
right now. He can up to a certain level of spend, at a tier, certain
I'm
tiers
getting
of
the
spending.
impression, the impression that if he tries to do that, he can't do it.
Well, you were mayor, Joe, so you would
Well,
know.
But he worked under a different budget.
I didn't
He
deal
worked under
with
a different budget than the
what
current
you
budget.
guys are doing right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's a charter issue or
But,
I understand what you're
but
saying.
it's an operating issue, Dave, I mean, it's
Put it down
overall.
to a charter and let's talk about it, but I'm not
Well,
sure how you wanna do that.
It already says on line 22, prepare an annual budget and submit the same to council. But
Like
when you were mayor,
22,
that's what you did.
Yeah.
You prepared the budget.
And I operated within my budget every year.
Well, but the budget that they're working with and have worked with was not prepared. So that's,
And then I think if I could interrupt it on page line 282, the council is the legislative authority, the council approves the legislation. So when the mayor prepares, the mayor's responsibility to prepare a budget to council. If council chooses, for example, to take out all capital expenditure for 1 year and put it in the reserve account, or to do whatever, whether we like it or not, or agree with it or not, and they have approval by their council, it's their authority to do it. They do it, the mayor's gotta live with it,
Right.
whether the mayor likes it or not.
No, he has the
Once-
ability to veto it. So.
He absolutely can,
Yeah.
and I don't wanna change that, he should have the right to veto. But I'm just saying, the council controls my budget. I remember Bob Haydorn and Orville Hoover saying that the whole time, council controls the budget.
well, it's true.
And council controls by their budget, and that's where they do. So whether the mayor likes it or not, he has to live with it. But once that budget's approved, and the budget, don't forget, has to come from the budget commission in the county, based on each fund, each category, each tax levy. So there's certainly, flexibility that the mayor or council really doesn't have based on those. But once it's all set, then the mayor should have the right to spend it based on the budget without coming back to council every 3 months or however.
Do we still do pay ordinance every, council meeting?
No.
No? Okay.
The only thing that we're required now to do on a monthly basis pursuant to the auditor is there's a financial report that's supposed to be acknowledged. You don't have to accept it, you don't have to vote on it, you just have to acknowledge that you saw it. But you
Listen,
think that
I'm
you-
not disagreeing with the check and balance through our system, because there is some good check and balance here, okay? It's just that you need to allow a mayor to administrate and council to legislate, and let them have the authority, and if they wanna hold the purse strings, because they feel that the mayor may be out of control, then they ought to do that. Okay, I'm not suggesting that they not do that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there needs to be a check and balance in this whole process. But let them do what they need to do then to administrate. If you have an emergency, I mean, example, if you need to go out and make an emergency repair on a street, you need to make the emergency repair. You shouldn't have to be held up by council.
They don't, I don't think they
Well,
are.
they had a situation like that. Well, that's not what I'm being told.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, there was a repair on, I'll give you an example, on Miglerini Way, where there was a large hole that was not created by the developer.
Right.
But it was won by the water department. And that repair couldn't be made because they didn't have the funds to make the repair. Well, but that's what I'm being told.
Well,
So if
somebody
it's-
might have told you that, it's totally false.
Okay. So I'm telling you what I'm being told, so if it's not
Okay.
true, then it's not true.
That's totally false, it was a problem they had with trying to determine who was responsible for the payment.
I think ultimately then they found that it was the city of Cleveland, but nevertheless.
Correct.
All right, anything else in this section that we want to address?
Peggy had mentioned something last time, and I didn't think about it until after the fact, but on line 8, you question why after the comma, line, number 8, line 210, in which the mayor shall sign all contracts, and that is, comma, along with the director of finance were required by ordinance, and you thought that should totally be out and go with under finance. The only thing I thought of after the fact, there are sometimes there's an ordinance, that there's a document called, signed by the fiscal officers that in fact there is an ordinance that has another, and I don't know if that's what that means.
What it
there.
meant?
I'm not sure, but I didn't think about it until afterwards, and I thought, there are times that I have to get that signature, and it's part of the
There were
ordinance.
times too.
For bond council?
Not necessarily for bond, I can't think of anything right now, but it's attached actually to the ordinance, and it's basically saying we have the money to do this.
If that's what it
That's a
means.
certification
Yeah.
by the finance director. But there's other times where the mayor may have to, in the absence of a finance director, sign a check.
I don't
So
think, yeah.
that happens too, so.
I mean, it's no big
Yeah.
deal.
I mean, it's no
I
big
see.
deal, but-
Make
Oh,
sense to
okay.
me.
All right.
All right,
And
moving
that's
on,
pretty
where
much where
we left off.
I mean, you talked about the absence a lot, and that whole thing, the technology not being, well, that you suggested the word absent come out on 254.
Okay. All right, anything else about the section dealing with the mayor that we think we need to consider before we move on and start talking about the next section, which is council? You ready to move on? Good. Joe? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said good.
No, I really don't have anything more. I think that, I think I probably said as much as I should say about the mayor's position.
Are we still on section 302, Dave?
Section 302, what's 302?
The call, mayor?
Sure, what do you want to talk about before we leave the mayor?
All right, because this is the problem we had once before. Under 302, the mayor shall have been at least 2 years prior,
Right,
okay? Now, we've had this problem before. I could say, I wanna run next year, I just moved back into Macedonia, but I lived here prior. We've had this problem before. So what talking to my legal beagles, something you should say, if the election for mayor is November 1st, you have to be here 365 or 7, you know what I'm saying, days. Because prior, 2 years prior, what does that mean?
Didn't we discuss
Yeah,
that?
we did.
We did.
You did,
We
we've
did.
got it here, it's black and white, I
On the
have it,
list.
didn't forget, it's on the list. Got
Okay.
it, got
All
it.
right, all right,
Okay.
now we're
Got
gonna
it.
talk about the legislative and the same
got
issues
everything
gonna come up in
highlighted
the
that-
legislative, because
And
we've
then
already
I know
talked
here,
about it.
I honestly got it, you have it there.
All right, all right, any other changes, let's talk about section 4, legislative authority. We have 5 members, we've already discussed the issue of the veto. And we've also discussed the issue of qualifications for council 2 years prior, that's the same thing. Anything else that you believe we need to address for changes
And
as
we
it
also
relates
talked
to
about
council?
holding no other public office, because that was brought up.
Yeah,
I
what
know,
line
I
is
brought
that
that
on?
up. So what did
297.
we come to any conclusion on it though?
No, it was just,
We
it's a
just
comeback.
said, comeback,
It's a
okay,
comeback.
just one thing. Because it's also in the mayor's section too, I think it should be
Yeah, you can,
consistent.
right, yeah, we got it.
That includes public office.
Make it clear, because you brought up Cuyahoga County, and that whole thing that happened in Cuyahoga County,
Right.
and then when you were here, and then with Shane Parker, you brought up your ninth district.
Right.
And the mayor working as
You brought that up, that's in there, right, in the service,
service director.
right.
Oh, yeah,
Interim.
right, interim service director. Okay.
There was just one other item, Dave, and that was what I had passed out at the last meeting, as it related to the mayor. And actually it will extend on the council too, so it just has to do with the fact that while you're a council person or a mayor or whoever, you may not like the fact that some litigation is brought against the city or whatever the case may be, but I think that council people and mayor need to stay neutral in a situation where a lawsuit is brought against the city and not jump into a situation, so the moral feelings should be to support the city until and after there's been an adjudication of a particular case that's out there.
I agree, but I guess my question is that something we want to put in the charter? I don't think.
Well, I think it's important enough, because I think that all too often I'm seeing, back in my day, I saw it happen a lot. There was a lot of times where I would see council members that would, because they didn't like the mayor or they didn't like somebody, they were going to side with somebody against the people, because you're siding against the people.
But Joe, if something like that happens, and I've been here just as long as you probably, who controls the law department spending all that money to say enough is enough?
I don't understand what you're saying, Chuck. Tell me.
No, if there is a lawsuit, you say council and the mayor should stay out of it because of, all this beyond, okay, then who is to determine, other than council or the mayor, if that lawsuit should council authorize the law department to spend $500,000 to fight something? Who's gonna determine?
Well, let me suggest this to you. First of all, many lawsuits that are filed either against the city, we have insurance, and there's an insurance company that steps in and represents the city. And that insurance company, by the way, isn't going to just let money be spent infinitum. They're gonna want to have some point of where it's going to be settled, or at least they hoped it to be settled. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think that anybody should be intervening, in my opinion. Now, I shouldn't say necessarily intervening is not the right word. It should be taking necessarily sides, and that's where I think that they sacrifice the city's position.
Are you suggesting that someone did take sides in a
Well,
particular case recently?
I'm suggesting that I have seen it and I have viewed it and I can see it, yes.
Here's my question.
Yes.
I'm trying to focus this. What section of, I understand there's a philosophical issue that we're discussing here. but we're talking about a charter, so the question is, what section of the charter are we gonna, is it addresses this, and how do we wanna change it to? So that's my question.
Well, I guess the verbiage that I had presented at the last meeting as it related to the mayor would be
Added to the city.
added to both the mayor and to the council people, so that
Right.
it was very clear, and it was in there, I may have been under the removal and censure part, I'm not sure, but I think that's where I had it.
Here's where you're at.
So what you're saying is that this should be in the legislative council part as well as the mayor, so.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
But, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
The oath of office that you take
Great.
says, shall uphold the charter
Constitution, laws, state law, Mexico.
and the ordinances.
Right.
So, isn't that fair? Or,
I think it does, but I think what Joe's addressing is things that you can't really put in a charter. I think it's, I don't remember his language that you talked
yeah, well,
about.
I've got it, and
But it certainly is a,
Well,
all right, here's what you asked we put in here.
okay, read that for us.
Then you would put right after 301, 3.3A, depart, okay. It would be right after A. Be the chief conservatory of peace and cause all laws to be enforced. Implicit in this, the mayor is obligated to defend any litigation challenging ordinances or actions of any boards or commissions, and not consort with any person or companies challenging such codes or actions of any municipal employee, board or commission, and that the city and the taxpayers are to be supported and defended as part of the mayor's oaths and duties of office.
Sounds like while you're talking.
I would argue that
understand
that's already
that.
there. That's already,
This is what
the
he
oath
said,
of
so
office.
well, you
yeah.
know, I agree that it's probably there in a general sense, that it's in that when you take the oath of office, you're supposed to uphold the laws of the city of Macedonia, the laws of the state of Ohio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, I think that it needs to be defined a little bit more extensively. And it's not a knee-jerk reaction, because as I read through a lot of the other charters, by the way, I read through Drexfield's, and I read through Greensburg's, and there was one other one I read through, but interestingly is that there was obviously something that occurred in Drexfield that they felt that they had to put something in there about buildings, and if somebody built something that it wasn't approved, or was in a district that wasn't approved, that they'd have to raise the building. The mayor was demanded to enforce it, so it was a knee-jerk reaction to that particular situation. I think that in general terms, I think when everyone who runs for office needs to have some sort of extensively outlined detail of what it is their responsibilities are. And I think that some people just don't understand how far they can go.
Joe, if I go to the Board of Zoning Appeals on my street for a change, the person living next door to me is a Board of Zoning Appeals member. Are they allowed to vote? You just said, no. You think?
I'm not making a legal decision here, that's a legal question, is if there's something that they're voting on that is.
Well, no, you talk about favoritism, I'm just saying, is that person allowed to vote because she lives next, or he lives next door to me?
You know, Chuck, that stuff happens all the time. People give in their vote because of it's a friend or it's a neighbor.
And taking an oath isn't gonna change that.
No.
Perhaps it's not gonna change it, but I have to tell you this, that council members will judge for themselves as to whether or not somebody breaches that obligation to the city. And the mayor will have to deal with council if he breaches his responsibility to the city.
But you know what, the council breaks so many of their own rules, and nothing's ever done about it. that this is like Butte here. You can have as many rules as you want, if council's not gonna enforce them,
I understand what you're saying, Tina, but don't you think that if we don't put something in place, then?
well,
But
woulda,
if
coulda,
you-
shoulda is about what I got to say
Well,
about that.
then if you
Be
don't
nice
put
if
not-
politicians were honest, but they're not, and mostly nobody can do
So-
anything
so-
about it.
So if we don't put anything in place, then there is no check and balance to that issue.
I think we already have something in place, and then even when someone is newly elected, in addition to that, they're required to attend a course on it.
Of course.
And, you know,
Hopefully they understand after they go to the course, you know.
Let me just say this, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, I'm a resident, I'm a voter, I go to council meetings and I see stuff that happens that stinks. I look it up, it doesn't sound like it's supposed to be happening, what do? Who do you complain to? You just hope that the people that you get in office are gonna do the right thing. A lot of us know that they're not gonna do the right thing. As far as this thing with accusing Scott.
Well, you know,
He's
that's
he's not been indicted, he's not been accused, publicly that I know, but I'll tell you what, the administration's already hung the guy. Let's
I'm not
follow
gonna-
the rules, there you go with
I'm not gonna go into.
favoritism.
Well, again, I'm not going into.
Mayor wants him
particular-
out, city says there's no grounds.
Yeah.
So who do you complain to?
You know, that's why they call, term limitations are by the voters. And when they came up with term limitations a number of years ago and said you can only serve 8 years, I have my feelings about when the legislature can only serve 8 years because on their way out, in their last 4 years, they're figuring out a way to feather their nest.
Yeah, just like our council
As
did
they
when
go
they
out.
left, the last council
So,
left.
My
gotta be
opinion,
safeguards.
is that the people should be the term limitation. They should make the decision when somebody should go out of office.
We have people on various boards in the city of Macedonia who will be on these boards until I drop dead. 15 years, 20 years. You know, it's just, that's not
Are you
fair.
suggesting there should be term limits for the boards?
Oh my gosh, yes. I've been trying to get on a board for how many years, Dave?
Long time.
Long time. The only one I got on was this one, because you know who couldn't stop it. That's not fair. That's not honest. It's not serving the public. What can you do about that? Your legislation has to be that these people that are nominated have limits.
Well, interestingly, as I read in the Brexville one, is that they had an election of the Charter Commission. That was pretty interesting. They put it on the ballot, people had to vote them in.
Well, the first one,
Well, I
Yes.
thought it was
all
thereafter.
of them, every review has to be voted
I
on too?
believe that's true.
Yeah, it's the way it's in there.
Because I know it's a requirement for the
So-
first
That's
charter.
costly. I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
that's costly. Nobody ever thinks, everybody wants to do anything, never.
I would think you'd almost end up getting the same people who just wanted to do it all the time. Who knows? All right, well, that's on the list, because, okay, anything else that we think needs change in regard to section 4 of the legislature? That we wanna take a second look at?
Sure, exactly what you just said, what section? No, I know we're in section 4, but what did we want to take at?
I'm asking, is there anything else?
Oh.
Joe wants to add the same thing. that
Yeah,
we
yeah, I
talked
got that,
about.
yeah,
You
yeah,
got
yeah,
that
yeah, I
down.
got that.
So the
Okay.
question is, are there any other changes that in section 4 that
Well-
we have not identified?
Line 425, Tina brought up about boards and commissions, can we bring something up about that? Or is that,
Well, that's kind of, not in the legislation, is
it's in section 4, but it's not, relative to council.
With respect to that issue,
it? All right. Just, go ahead.
can I, I just wanted to comment that council has to confirm that appointment of whomever there is sitting on any given board. So when there's a renewal, they can either deny it or confirm it. I mean, that's the check and balance that you have there, Tina.
Okay.
Well, then I guess I'll have to ask my councilman, are they gonna vote the same people in next year for the 16th year?
All right, let's try to,
Oh, are we going back to council?
well, we're in section 4. So
Okay.
I'm trying to get us organized, and I'm doing a very poor job, and I apologize for that. So, let's try to take them in order. We talked about 4.1, 4.2, let's try to kind of go in order.
See on 294 does the village council, see that village?
All right, so you're gonna, that's on the list that you're
Yeah,
gonna hit,
you've
right?
got search,
right,
village
good.
and gender.
All right. All right, section 4.3, president, vice president, 1 year, blah, blah, blah. Does anybody feel that that needs to be changed in regards to the clerk of council?
What's the majority vote, Dave?
For 3 out of 5, majority vote. Why?
No, the reason you know me, I've written Attorney General, I've asked 1 million people, I'm waiting for the Attorney General to get me a court case where it's binding, okay? Some people say 2/3 of 5 is 4, others say it's 3,
I know.
okay? Nobody's come up with a court case, I'm waiting, I've talked to the Attorney General. If he can find a court case in the state of Ohio which says 2/3 of 5 is either 3 or 4, then we have to abide by that. Where does it say legally 2/3 of 5 is either 3 or 4, other than our law department said it's
But
4?
this doesn't talk about that.
In line
This
306,
just
it says majority,
Pardon?
so we're
Right,
good.
right.
Line 306
Yeah.
is majority. We all know what majority is, right?
What's the majority of 5?
3.
3.
That's what I'm
Except-
saying.
It has to be greater than 50%.
I know, but in this section, it
Yeah.
doesn't say a percentage, it's majority. And I think that in the essence of moving forward on this topic, a majority is a majority and it's 3 out of 5. If,
It was
and I-
6 before then, right?
it doesn't matter what it is, it's 5, so it's 3 out of the 5. And then unless there's a extenuating circumstances where we wanted to show 4 or something, like maybe the suspension of the rules or something we could talk about, I think it should always be a majority. But
I'm not saying that, but if we have 5 council on people, 1 don't show up, majority is 3, or is it because there's only 4, what's the majority then?
Majority would be,
Well, the majority of council is 3. If you have 4 members present, then it's 3.
majority is still 3.
Okay, you could have a quorum, with 3, but you can't transact any suspension of rules because you need 4.
But that's what I'm telling you, Joe, where does it legally state a majority of 4 is?
Okay, it's not my place to say, but you already know, we've had a legal opinion in Robert's rules. Just bear with me, Chuck. You're asking me, in Robert's rules, when they do a division of a number,
Mhm.
if it's 9.1, it goes up to 10.
10.
If it's 11.2, they go up to 2. But it is a percentage, but when the percentage breaks down and there's a fractional number,
Right.
it goes to the higher
All right,
number.
because 2/3 of 5 is 2.333, so it goes to 3, right?
It goes up to the next highest number, okay?
The
Now-
section we're talking about happens to be the one area that it's a non-issue for
Right,
once,
right,
because
But
it
all-
says majority
right, but all I'm
instead of.
trying to say is there is documentation, and in our codified ordinance, it says, when our charter is silent, our codified ordinances are silent, we refer to the Robert's rules.
Right. And you were talking about for veto. Right, we're gonna address that issue. Okay?
Well, like I said, there's so many different opinions, and like I said, I'm waiting for the Attorney General.
it doesn't matter what the Attorney General says, because if we want to make a recommendation to go to the voters and ask them to change it, either to do it by words, whole numbers instead of fractions, whatever, we have that right to do it.
Unless
So-
the court's ruled, I'm sorry, Peggy, you're
That,
wrong.
once we make a decision on what we want to do, then we send it to Joe Deamer, let Joe Deamer tell us that we can't do it that way, so
You gonna trust him too?
it's
Okay.
just the process.
Okay, that's
we
not
have
a
to go
charter
through.
issue. All right, okay.
Are we
Go-
on
go ahead, Joe.
406?
Yeah, Peggy, what did you say?
On 406, I
I'm ready
just want to
for
make
406.
sure I'm
Regular meeting.
understanding this. The last sentence, 334, and again, the same thing on line 339, it says blah, 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 and shall be open to the public in accordance with ordinance. I'm thinking, is it missing something? Should it say current ordinance?
You know what, you see where it was amended in 1994? there was discussion about that. Can you let me do some research
Oh,
on this?
sure.
Because, I am remembering this, but I don't remember exactly.
Sure.
But there was major discussion.
And the same thing under line 339. I'm just thinking if it's missing something, that's all.
Okay,
Okay, that's all on that
all right.
page.
Everybody's okay with quorum, 3 members?
Yeah.
All right. Starting on 350, section 9, which is powers of council.
On line 356, should it say, unless council ways of 4 of the members elected, do we have to say or appointed to council? Because some council members may be appointed in an interim before they're elected.
Skip over
I don't think
404.
it needs to state that, because I think under the law,
Yeah.
the appointed
One of the
official
reasons
has
we
every
skip
right.
over-
We just are
I'm sorry.
going
Did we
along.
skip 404?
If there's an issue, no.
we
Do you
just
have an
read-
issue you
do
want
you
to
have an
talk about
issue
it for
under that?
I was just interested in a full-time clerk of courts,
Council.
clerk of council, rather than part-time.
I think that's a council issue, the council would have to decide to hire, to make it a full-time position. Unless, I don't think we want to make that, unless you're saying you want that in the charter.
No, I don't want piddly stuff, but no offense to Josephine, but we're paying quite a bit for part-time.
Well,
And if there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done and isn't being done,
I think that's
that a full-time may be better than an assistant.
okay.
That's just my
I
opinion.
guess the question I would have is, well, it's not really a question, it's a statement. We don't define anywhere else whether positions are part-time or full-time in
I
a
think
charter.
the only thing we do is the mayor.
And also in terms of fire, because,
So I think it's a,
Yeah.
and that's only because it's under, that's the only time there is a little thing about part-time firemen, I think, in there.
Okay.
All right, go on, okay.
So as long as, Josephine said that she thought it's implied that elected or appointed, we don't have to add that, because I noticed we didn't, and so.
Yeah, I think when you, appoint someone, they take on the same thing as an elected person,
Okay.
so the charter
Okay.
probably would have to address them.
All right. As we go back through the rest of the things on the council, anything else that you all feel that we need to discuss or be
This is
changed?
really minor, but, on line 370, it says each ordinance or resolution providing for A, B, C, and then at the end of C, it says assess therefore and then D. And then is that like, and then there's no other heading or numbering, line 377, is that, and then it comes back to A, B, and C and D again.
Are you making sure that that's correct, is that what you're asking?
I think she is, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's like,
If it needs another numeral,
or if it needs a
Or a section,
separation,
yeah,
yeah,
section.
I'm just, it's like minor, but,
No, let's just look at the real thing here.
Yeah, that's just,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
cause usually if it's a D,
And we're
then it
talking
would be.
410?
Yeah, 410, right?
Yeah, 410, and it goes to D, and then it goes back down to A, B, C, and D again,
Okay,
after,
so,
on lines 3 and 2.
okay, so C would be improvements, and then D. Yeah, so it looks exactly like that.
I don't think it needs a change, but that's.
I just think the way this is formatted like that, if you look at it this way, does it make more sense if you look at it like type? Or do you think it's still not?
I just wanted to make sure,
See, this is how it should look, like this. So it's basically saying, okay, the effective date of an ordinance or resolution, and then it says providing for the appropriation of money,
right,
annual tax, improvements that somebody petitions for, or the emergency, necessary for the immediate, the emergency clause.
Right, and then those are when it can be an emergency, and then, and the second cluster of, A, B, C, and D are when you cannot have
Right.
an emergency, and it flows better that way than it did here, I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
it's just because of the paragraph right here.
Right,
When you look at it over here,
It
it's sort of.
looks
this like,
better.
Yeah.
okay, all right, no problem. I mean, I'm good, check.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, any thoughts, any changes that you think may be necessary in the rest of section 4.9 or 10, any sections dealing with council? Appointment of vacancies, I mean, I don't know. I think that last time we had to appoint a vacancy, it seemed to work out fine.
You might wanna address, you talked about this last time. When, and I don't know if it'll ever happen again,
Okay, go ahead.
but when Barb Cornick, became mayor, her position remained open because she didn't have a special election and she acted in both capacities, so where would that be addressed if you wanted to address it? Remember she didn't technically vote twice, do you remember?
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know where
just-
you'd put that, if you wanted to put it anywhere.
You know,
It
I
was,
think that when you're president of council, you don't lose your vote, as I remember.
It was in section 304, it
Oh.
says, "The president of council shall become the acting mayor, and why so acting, have all the powers of the mayor, but shall not cease to be the president of council." That was that, it just kinda doesn't, it just doesn't flow right, you think, but on the other hand, if
When
the.
will it happen?
Well, there may be, if
Sorry, I
that,
thought it was in.
we know that if it happens in the first 2 years, then they have to have a reelection, or another election. If it happens after, then that person rides for 2 years in that position. So,
Sorry, Barb, I thought it was in the section.
if it's after the 2 years, then council needs to act then to appoint somebody to a seat. And once that occurs, then they lose that right then to hold that
And
position.
that
So
has to be
perhaps,
within.
so perhaps what we ought to do is write a section in here that says that upon the sitting of a new council person, or appointment of a new council person, then that section, that doesn't apply any longer for that president of council to have the ability to vote on council. Did they lose that ability to do so at that time? I mean, it only sounds reasonable,
I know.
but it is a good point. It is a good point, because it's.
That was an unusual circumstance, because they didn't have the election, and it was open for that whole time. So that both, you were in conflict.
So they never
with each other.
appointed anybody during that whole time?
No.
But,
You mean when Barb?
Yeah, you didn't, until Barb was elected, nobody, there
Right,
was.
but the reason they didn't was that I think that she left, or Joe left, she became mayor in like April or
May.
And the next election was in November, so it was just a matter of less than a year. That's why.
You would have had the election in August, it was on the heels of the,
Right.
and it was saving money,
Right.
okay, so
All right, so we'll try to figure out what.
I'm gonna say that's a go back to, right?
Yes. All right. All right, and now this brings us, I think, to
Close it?
Tina's question. No, she has some issues regarding boards and commissions. Council may establish additional departments, commissions. But that only talks about establishing. I think what Tina's question is dealing with boards and term limitations on boards, so, okay. I'm not sure if that's the proper section to address that issue. All right, anybody else have any issues with the sections dealing with mayor or council?
Well, on section 414, if I can, I
Yes.
noticed in Twinsburg, and I just happened to cut this out, it was in last month, they advertise in the newspaper for all their open seats, so every year they open up, rather than just automatically reappoint somebody. And they take applications, because like Tina, I've also offered to serve on a board or commission and has been, not accepted.
Probably not as many times as I
And
have.
so,
But then, I guess the
um,
question is, even if we open them up every year, that doesn't mean that the mayor.
no, the mayor has a right to appoint and council has a right to confirm, absolutely. But by requiring the mayor to advertise, it opens the door for more people.
We just did that with civil service.
Yeah, because a lot of times.
You put it in
they're
the paper,
We actually put it on the website and made the announcement and,
and did you get people?
A couple, actually, we interviewed a couple and he wound up choosing Mr., I don't remember who all the application, I know for certain two, one was retired recently, I think. And then Mr. Townsend, he wound up picking Mr. Townsend.
And was it, people brought to the city that probably wouldn't have come had we not advertised?
I don't know, this one name, I could only think of the, two, that they had the two appointments. And I knew Mr. Townsend, of course, but I didn't recognize him really well.
I don't know, I just thought it might be nice to have, because I just remember somebody, when I was at council saying, we don't have anybody else to serve, or I can't find anybody. But how much do we really try?
Well, they never advertise,
They've never advertised.
not for, these committees.
Right,
All right.
Recently, it's been put on the website.
and again, I don't know
But
if
if
this
you know,
is
do you know to
really-
look on the website?
I don't know if this is a charter issue either, to put
Right.
something like this in the charter.
No, it's
but it
just
would be
another
nice to
thing that
open
needs
the
to be
door.
corrected.
I've got some great people that that I know that live in Macedonia, that are young, the
Mhm.
type of people that, think
Have
about
love
it,
of the
we've been
game.
around here for a long time. How old were you when you started? You had to be, probably 30.
What?
You had to be 30.
Oh, you
Yes,
on
I did.
council?
No, being involved in the city, when you were the
Oh, yeah,
prosecutor,
probably.
when I met you guys, and
Probably
Joe
80.
too. I was 24, where are all the 24-year-olds?
Because
Yeah.
everybody keeps getting reappointed
I know,
without
But we
advertisement.
need to get young people down here.
And that's
We
why
need to
people are
get
moving to
people
Twinsburg.
here.
You
Well,
don't
but that's
understand.
that could be a function though, Tina, of asking council to ask that it be advertised. That's not that would be a charter.
It's not a charter thing, it's just
Right.
something that
Then-
desperately
then-
needs to
then
be
you
done.
just say that's, if council asks for that, then they say, well, then we're imposing on the mayor's right to administer.
Mhm.
But let me tell you this, I have to tell you, sometimes you're out there looking for people to sit on boards, and you can't find them.
I don't think you'd have a problem here. There's a lot of
Okay, I mean-
people interested.
But I
And-
have
and
to
it's
tell you, over
been-
in the past, we used to search everywhere for people that wanted to serve on boards.
When Ken Martin was on council, Mr. Lobinger said to Ken, hey, we gotta start offering people something to get them to join. So these people that were already waiting in line to be on boards got free, let's give them free rec center. We'll get more people to sign up. Didn't happen, because there's no advertisement.
Right,
Does that currently happen, if you serve on a board?
No, I only serve on this one.
No,
Oh,
Must
You
have
get-
been on the
you
rec
get- you
board.
get free,
No,
rec.
I don't get
No.
I was
free
gonna go
crap.
to rec this week and say I'm on the charter commission.
I don't want free crap, I don't wanna be accused of, being on a payroll somewhere.
I'm gonna say Tina
I'll
told me
pay
I
for
could
my
go
own
here.
stuff. Hey, your name's on the building, I wouldn't be talking if I was
Miss
you.
Hannah told me that, you're not gonna let me in, Angie?
All right, here we move on, Article 5, Mayor's Court. Does anybody feel that we need to make changes?
I would like to throw something out the mayor's court.
Abolish.
I would, but it says the mayor may in his discretion hold a mayor's court pursuant to the statutes.
Right,
But shouldn't it say if council has the legislative authority, say council may determine that a local mayor's court is in the best interest of the residents? Or council may by legislation transfer the powers to the municipal courts in the area? I mean, council should really it's a financial issue, it costs us money, we collect money, but it costs us money, so shouldn't the council have the right to make that decision?
He's biting at the bit, I don't even wanna look his way, do I? Because he's biting at the bit here.
I look at Dave.
no, I'm not even,
Oh,
I'm not.
no, I'm
totally
looking at
neutral on
him, I
this
didn't
issue.
even look at,
Well,
No,
you know why we always kept mayor's court here, to be very honest, is that we wanted to make it convenient for our
Who
residents.
did it?
Wasn't to fix friends tickets?
The majority of cases in mayor's court
I
are
have to
outside
tell you
are-
that
are
wasn't the
residents.
case. You know, Dave, how many years ago how long did you serve as the administrator? 12 years. So.
It has nothing to do with
and
that.
our case in Macedonia, by the way, was what changed the tide. It really wasn't Macedonia who started it, was really Boston Heights that started the issue of whether or not mayors should sit as the judge in mayor's courts. And I had no problem putting in a magistrate. I thought it was the perfect thing to do. Nobody wants to sit there and have to deal with residents. I gotta tell you, that was a tough thing to do.
Well, I think that mayor's courts changed over the 30 years that I've been involved with the city, that the purpose is different, the laws are so specific about the way you have to handle cases today, and it's not like just the mayor, like, you know, like you just said, showing up and setting a judgment. You have to have a magistrate, you have to go through training, you have to do this, tickets are handled a special way. That costs us money, but forget all that, okay? And whether I personally agree that we need a mayor's court or not here is not what I'm saying either. But I'm saying, shouldn't council sit in that determination of whether or not it's, the city should have a mayor's court, not the mayor? If council is the legislative authority and the council sets policy, and that's a policy decision, shouldn't it be council's?
Are you looking at mayor's court
Authority.
in there? I don't.
Actually, I was looking to see if there was a chapter in it, because what happens, it refers to the authorized book, and that's what I was looking for.
Let me just express this from many standpoints. When you have a municipal court that you have to send your police officers to each and every week for mayor's court or every 2 weeks, it takes them out of the city. They wind up sitting there, spinning their wheels for hours at a time. You're paying them for that. There's more control of having the mayor's court here. While the financial aspect of it depends on what the revenue is, obviously, and whether it's a balance or a balance neutral, revenue neutral kind of income, there's a side to it that you're probably not seeing, and that's the side I'm referencing. Dave can tell you that we may have, the police officer may be on duty here, and he can come into court, and then we can put him right back out on the street.
I understand, but there's
I,
also video agreements too.
I understand exactly what you're saying, I gotta think about that.
But I agree, you suggest, but no, I don't think either of you are making an argument that we want to try to put it up to the voters to abolish it, are you?
That's not mine to
Right.
call, it's the council. If I was on
Right.
council and I wanted to consider this issue,
Right.
I would do a look back, maybe 5 years, and look at seeing what the value does mayor's court bring to my residents, and how does it improve or disprove the quality of life? What's the net cost? I would guess, I have no idea, I haven't been around for 5 years, I would guess that the city loses money on its
No.
mayor's court.
They say they don't.
But I don't know that because I was